Okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to call to order the David Douglas School Board District meeting at 7:02 p.m. And we want to begin with our Native American land acknowledgement. Today, I would like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Claflamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who have made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking opportunities. Today, these same communities celebrate their heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that would be greatly admired by their ancestors. Thank you. And then I also want to, again, ground us in our mission as the David Douglas School District. Our mission at David Douglas is to provide meaningful, equitable, and highly effective instruction so that each student grows and thrives socially, emotionally, and academically. Through supportive communities of learners, David Douglas staff will foster the whole child to be a force for positive change in the global society. Welcome everybody to our meeting tonight, and we're going to get started with our student body president report. Ms. Dora Hussein.
Hello, everyone. So what I have reported today is we have as a school or as a student council, we have officially completed our mission statement for Communicare, which is a fundraiser to raise money for those, I guess, to organizations, to raise money for organizations that are basically in our areas of expertise. And our mission statement for this year is targeting homelessness in our community and specifically domestic violence survivors. In school, we are currently working on our winter assembly, which is going to introduce our Scots Angels for this year, which I'm super excited about. Winter formal, and our Scots gear delivery for those of you that ordered Scots gear. I know you guys are excited about that. I don't have anything, I'm not wearing anything right now, but we finished our deliveries today, so you guys should be getting those very soon. That's what I have for you guys today.
Thank you.
Donna, can I ask her a question?
Sure.
When is the assembly scheduled for Scots Angels, and are you going to do the bucket donation? Because I assume this is the in-person assembly.
Yeah, we do the bucket donation every year, and it's been like 2 years since we could do it. Our assembly is on December 9th. Yes. I want to say starts at 9:17.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to jump out. I don't even know if you're aware or not, but I wanted to specifically thank you. And Donna and I had the opportunity to visit and talk about bond and any and all work that you guys did. I just want to throw out a thank you. If you haven't heard, the bond is currently passing 60-40. The Oregonians called that it has passed, and I'll be talking about that more in my superintendent's report, but I know sometimes with homework and other things, you might not have to get out of here early. So I wanted to officially thank you. As I was looking at the announcements, the bulletin every day, it was in there, the information that you guys put in there. So I saw the little pieces that you did that were big pieces that helped in the overall thing. So thank you so much. Really.
Honestly, just thank you for coming to us and telling us about it. And I'm so excited that it passed, and we talked about it in class. And we're honestly just so excited for the future for the school.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyone else? Sorry, thank you so much for coming out tonight. And now we're going to go on with our public comment. And it looks like we have 2 people. We'll start with Ann Bettany. Each person will have 3 minutes.
Hello, Chairwoman Barber and board members. My name is Ann Bedney. My last name is spelled Bedney. I'm here today with my daughter Lily, who's a student at Gilbert Park, and I'm here representing Girl Scouts for our select troop. I'm here wanting to testify about the change in rental policy for your facility rental policy. Our troop has been renting or using the space at Gilbert Park Cafeteria since 2017, since she was a wee little one in kindergarten. And we've been using the cafeteria for several years, and we all do a great job of cleaning up afterwards, being respectful. We're Girl Scouts, so that's what we do. And this year, when we went and applied to use the facilities, and we're notified that the rental policy for your facilities has changed, and we were presented with an estimate of $4,200. We meet on a bi-weekly or bi-monthly, is that right? Every other week at Gilbert Park. So that would be the estimate from September through June. And I wanted to say that that's quite a significant amount of money, and that is pricing our troop that has met there for years and is also serving the community through Gilbert Park and other schools. So we've been displaced, so to speak, and had to look for other places to meet. I also am in connection with other troop members that have meeting at different schools and have yet to find a place to meet. And I know that since we've been students and or parents and students of David Douglas for a long time, I know that your mission is aligned with Girl Scouts, wanting to educate and promote growth and opportunities for students. And I know that just being in the school too, community partnership is a big part of what makes David Douglas attractive as a taxpayer, as a parent, and I feel like that maybe this was an oversight, I don't know, but we've always been a community partner with David Douglas School District, and would do anything to try and help that partnership, since we also have the same mission of fostering growth with girls and graders. So I guess my ask here tonight is to, if we could take another look at what that policy is looking for and how we can work together. I know Girl Scouts, the COO, has reached out also as well about this, and so just coming to you to see what else we can do to work together for our kids and our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
And now we have Carrie Tursek, district staff, and this is through Zoom. No. Okay. Well, maybe we'll move forward with our invited public comment, and if she comes on later, we'll bring her up afterwards. And just for those who may not know, at the end or closer to the end of our time, we do have a point in our agenda where we will reflect on public comment, but we don't do that at this time. So moving forward, we have invited public input, from Zenger Farms. Presenters B. Ogden and J. Lawrence.
Hello. I'm Jai Lawrence, she, they. I'm the program education manager at Zanger Forum.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bee, she, they pronouns, and I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Zanger. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having us. We really just wanted to touch base with you all. We've been having the 5th graders in the district come out to Zanger Farm, I think from 2013. So if I'm doing my math right, I think about 8 years. I forwarded you all some slides. I'll briefly kind of go over our presentation. We really just wanted to touch base with you all. I haven't met with you all face to face, and so it's kind of nice to put faces to DDSD. We've been working closely with Jeff Gailey. We meet with him 6 times a year to go over curriculum and kind of touch base, and he's been super helpful in making sure our programs are running smoothly. So we're located on 11741 Southeast Foster Road, Portland, Oregon. It's on 122nd and Foster. We see the 5th graders from October to May. Typically 530 students come each season. Our program costs $130,000, and DDSD covers $9,000. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our educators from last year. Yeah, you all can look at that. It's a really great opportunity for students to kind of come out and experience the farm. That's kind of what we focus on in the fall. They get to walk around. There's a ton of veggies out in the field. We have chickens that they kind of caretake. We do a land stewardship project, and the focus in the fall is energy. Next slide. And you can go to the next slide, actually. So this is kind of the breakdown of student attendance. So total, we see 1,500 students. Next slide. Students love the wetlands. Like I said, they love stewardship. They've been pulling out all of the blackberries on the farm. We're almost running out. And they love taking care of the chickens. We have a flock of about 9. And every season, just every time they come back, they're always like naming them and checking in on them. And they just have a really, really great time. Next slide. You can see we've been collecting feedback from students. We've shifted to doing an in-person kind of paper format, and the responses have been great. You can kind of see that a large number of percentage of students feel that they are welcomed at the farm, that they've learned something new about gardening and stewarding the land, that they learned something new about plants and veggies, and that they've gotten to try a new vegetable or fruit. Next slide. This is some more feedback from educators. We have a team of about 8, 4 full-time coordinators, and then 4 hourly educators. Next slide. We've also been getting feedback from teachers. They have responded that they've felt really lucky to have such amazing leader and educators this year with their groups, that educators have done a great job engaging with kids, managing group, and teaching the content. Next slide. This is more feedback from teachers. We've gotten really great responses from teachers, and it's really nice that they've been responding to our online surveys and have really helped kind of shape programming, especially since the pandemic. We've really seen a difference in kind of behavior and stuff, and so teachers have been super helpful in providing feedback around what works or what doesn't work, so that's been really great. Next slide is more kind of graphs and feedback from teachers. And more than the other slides are also feedback from teachers. And I think the next slide is things to think through. This is more for us, but we're really thinking through sustainable programming. We're thinking about how to really meet the social, emotional needs of students. We've secured breakfast bars. We were noticing that kids were coming to the farm hungry. So that's been huge in kind of helping maintain focus and excitement throughout the day. We're thinking through program evaluations, how to encourage and get more feedback from teachers. Kind of working on updating our curriculum so it's fresh and current and kind of up to date. Really looking at how to support students that are learning English, students that are neurodivergent. So we're really have been updating our methods to meet that need.
If you advance the slide just one, you'll see all this data and then points that we're making. I also just wanted to note that all of this text, I believe, was provided to you beforehand, so we don't really want to like read you every quote or get into all the numbers. But I think one of the most important takeaways of all this data that's being presented to you is that we really value this partnership and the community that's built with the students, with the educators, with the farm, with the land, with the animals, with the plants, and all of the dialogue that happens there. And so we're, again, just coming here to share some of it with you and to encourage just continued conversation and deepening of partnership so that we have the most beautiful impact on everybody in the community and the land itself. And, you know, ultimately encourage like lifelong learners and lifelong science advocates and lifelong environmentalists, which we all recognize that, you know, is important not just for this community here, but for like the world community. Sorry to interrupt you.
The last slide is just drawings and feedback from students specifically, and then I'm going to actually pass it back to you if you want to share.
Go ahead.
You want me to share this?
Oh, no, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Don't.
Yeah, this is just, we've gotten some letters from students just thanking us, what their favorite part of the day was. Yeah, so just wanted to share that we've been getting great feedback from the students as well and really, really enjoy this program.
And one last thing to add that's exciting is on occasion we have young folks come back and be interns when they're like 17, 18, 19 years old who have done farm school when they're in 5th grade. And I honestly can't think of like a better like advocate than somebody who comes back to a program like 10, 12 years later when they have, you know, so many choices in their life. And as the final note for the end of our speaking portion, I have been in communication with Hua, and we would love to invite you all to actually come to the farm and to experience farm school. We've put together like a little farm school experience for DDSD. I've made invitations for everyone. I only have 10, I apologize, so you'll have to share. There's a code you can scan so you can register right now. And it's on a Friday during the day. I totally understand if you can't make it, you know, work is real. But we would love to, again, just to continue to deepen the relationship and the partnership and to invite y'all to come and have that experience too, to meet the chickens, to taste a fresh vegetable that's been grown out in the farm, to see what the wetlands are like. And they are soggy, I will tell you that. So is it okay if I pass this out? I just want to make sure. Okay.
I just forwarded that email to all of y'all, so.
Well, thank you all for having us, and we really do hope to see you out at the farm, and I recognize it's nice to see you.
Do we have any questions for them?
Yeah, if we have a few minutes, if we're allowed that sometime, we'd love to answer questions or tell more stories.
Well, I just want to say thank you, and I'm super impressed with the amount of feedback you've given us from the teachers, and all of this additional data is really great. And I really was impressed to see the cost and how much you're, I assume you're fundraising to provide these services to our children. And I mean, I know that on the breaks too, Zinger Farm is such a wealth of services for the kids and for the community during spring break, winter break, summer breaks, and your sliding scale makes the programming so accessible to the community and the kids. And so I'm just all around grateful for the continued ways in which you're serving the kids of Douglas and the community. I mean, it's great. And I've had older kids do your, interning too. So, I'm super thankful, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you. And I'd be happy to talk about fundraising that we undergo, because it is extensive. But I think there's just a great value to make sure that things are accessible and inexpensive. Like our CSA is sliding scale. Everything we do is sliding scale. And I think, though, that one of the realities of the world we live in is just, sharing resource costs and figuring out what makes sense. That $9,000 fee has not changed in the
2013.
since 2013. So in almost 10 years. But as we all are more than aware, the world has become more expensive and more complicated. Oh, even more flyers. Thank you. So yeah, I think that that's just part of the ability of being a nonprofit is to leverage all those relationships, whether they be from like the USDA or from Metro, City of Portland, or private funders, to make sure that we can close that gap, to make sure the quality of education for the students is always, exceptional. I feel like I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. No, I was just going to kind of echo some of the same sentiments of thank you so much. It's funny because, when I went to David Douglas, there wasn't that partnership, and it is such a cool thing that students could be part of. And I've been to the farm for other reasons, not for the school board, and actually seasonally have been supporting the CSA Partnerships for Health, and the veggies from that is incredible. Just the knowledge and everything that is grown on the farm, and to know that students are directly part of it is really, really cool. So thank you.
I just want to share thank you for coming to present. And I did send the email out. I plan on coming on November 18th, so thank you for sending that out. I work in education, so I've been on this farm tour several times already, and I think it's a great experience. And teachers love the opportunity because they also invite parents to join as well. And I think it's definitely a great experience. I love that partnership that you have for school districts. And so I do have 2 questions. The first question is, the numbers that you shared, are those numbers of total students overall that you serve, or is just for David Douglas student numbers?
Just for David Douglas, yeah.
And then second question is how can we be a better partnership as a school district with you? What is your ask for us?
I think that I just want to uplift all the ways that we already are just wonderful. We have such a strong partnership. I think the ability to revise curriculum every season, to get direct feedback from students, to get direct feedback from teachers is so valuable and wonderful. So all those avenues that already exist, just strengthening them and really uplifting and celebrating them. And I do think that there is a reality. Part of the reason why I insisted we create that boilerplate slide is that the cost is very high because we want to pay our staff well. We also want to make sure we have great materials. So I think that is probably the most challenging but important conversation for the coming season, is to think about the cost to the organization, and then the fee that David Douglas covers, and what is possible for the future. And also to take into consideration that, unfortunately, having a single figure that stays the same for 10 years doesn't build in the space for the necessary growth. Just as a side note, Centennial School District has reached out to me wanting to do a similar program. So the model of farm school is robust, and it should be repeated, not just at Zenger, at other farms, at other places. So that's another thing to kind of think about too, is what is the partnership with Portland Public Schools or Centennial School District. We don't have to start there in the beginning, but I like to think that as well, as what other young folks would be excited to engage in this kind of programming, and how can we help steward or model or share what we know.
I had a couple of questions. Based on what you just said, though, just for clarity, is David Douglas the exclusive partner with Zenger Farms? Okay. And then I wondered, and I'm not sure if I missed this, does the farm, is it purely educational, or does it produce actual food for the community that is available to the community at large?
Yes. To address your first statement, David Douglas School District is the only district where we have a relationship where we host every fifth grader through the whole year. But we have robust field trips, open farm day, and then other, for lack of a better term, like one-off opportunities. So the number of youth that we serve, and then we have summer camp, is
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't
like
have a number.
nearly 2,000 plus students, youth students, learners. And then the CSA program alone, which is sliding scale, I believe serves 80 local families, and that's, we usually estimate a household size of 4, so, extrapolate from there. And then CSA Partnerships for Health, which is a countywide program, distributes vegetables that have actually been prescribed by a doctor or prescribing nurse to over like 350 households. So when you start bringing in all the different programs that Zenger does, we are very focused in like East Portland and very focused in communities that are near the land, that have like a connection to the land to strengthen that dialogue, that experience. And we end up, our numbers are much larger than just DDSD. But I think that the consistency is like so important for the youth, and like knowing part of their learning experience is observing the seasons. So if they only came like just fall, it would have a different impact. But seeing the fall and the winter and the spring is part of what's so meaningful. And I believe a lot of the DDSD students also become summer camp attendees. So then they have like a much deeper educational experience in summer camp because they're there every day, 8+ hours a day for 5 days, or they might come to more than one session.
And we also run after-school programs. So we're at Gilbert Park and Earl Boyles this year.
And then my last question was, you mentioned the internship. Is that an intentional partnership with the district as well, or is that totally separate?
We just started this year working with the community transition program, and so we have 2 interns that started last month, and then our internship program is more informal during the summer, but we do always try to prioritize DDSD students for all our programming, whether that be the open farm day or the summer internship.
And in the summers, are there more positions or only?
Yeah, there's typically 3 to 5.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There's also an internship attached, to the farming part of the farm. We do a farmer apprenticeship for primarily like BIPOC and LGBTQ plus farmers, upcoming farmers. And then there's an internship that's a farm internship. So there's like an educational internship and a farming internship. Lots of different ways to access education on the land.
And how many students are part of the apprenticeship? I'm like, wow, I know so much already about Zenger. It's just, I'm like, oh yeah. But how many students would you say? I know it's open to broader than just students, but just curious.
I don't know if I can give you a good estimate. I'm sorry, I don't know if I know those numbers. I just met the 2 recent interns, and they're wonderful, and I do know that they came through their experience as young learners, and that now they're back at the farm. We were just like wrangling chickens earlier today together, so.
Hi. Sorry. I just want to say thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for the service you provide. And just echo everything that's been said. I get to see the back end, the other end. I don't get to see the front end as much other than slideshows and different things, but I get to hear about it in the schools and the excitement, the energy from our students, and even our principals. I can tell you every year annually, right in spring, we talk about the Zenger, and we get to scheduling and who gets to pick first, and it's like draft day, I'm telling you. So I get to see that side of it, and it's really exciting, and principal, staff, everyone involved, we just know it's such a great benefit and partnership. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any final question?
I have 2 more things.
Okay.
Do you have an estimate of like how much costs have changed to run the farm school from 2013 to now? Like,
I can answer that for like the past 2 to 3 years. I don't know. Do you know if you could answer from that far back?
No, yeah.
That's hard to determine, but I know that our budget from last year was around like 115, and then before that it was around 1. So it just goes up essentially by like 10 to 15% every year, which is pretty just standard program cost increase in many fields, but education, community-based organizing is very common. So I guess if I extrapolated backwards, I don't want to try. I'm not sure what it cost in 2013.
Just curious. And I also just wanted to ask, or maybe bring up that before in the food pantries in the community or in our schools too, that I know that Zinger was real active in having food donations and like some educational. Even through, like, I remember in COVID, there was folks from Zinger that were giving out kids kits and, keeping kids, like, with some activities to do, and I thought it was really great. And I know, like, I've came to a gleaning day and gleaned and then brought to the food pantry. So, I mean, you guys are involved in all kinds of, well entwined all through our district. So, but thank you.
I feel like it's one of the, a lot of the, sorry if I interrupted anybody, but my final thought is just, being like stewards of the land is also like being stewards of the people that are part of the community that are part of the land. And I feel like that's why the relationship with DDSD is so important, because it represents that. And it represents Zinger as a place. If we look at like, extreme heat in the summer, for example, Zinger will have a cooler temperature on the site because of all the water that we have there. That translates to actually like cooler temperatures in the streets around us and the houses. So these ways that we're not even aware how interconnected we are, I think the farm is a place where you can start to explore and understand that. And I just gotta say, it's a great joy watching young folks eat a veggie off a vine that they've never seen before, and the sheer joy that they have from that like experimentation and that hands-on learning. And then, just recently I was farming, and a cohort of students was like, "Oh, look, farmers!" And it was just exciting for them to see people planting garlic, because it's, there's all that kind of like ephemeral, immeasurable learning moments is part of like being part of place. And I think that that's one of the things that a farm can offer. I answered more than you asked, so apologies.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and for sharing and for the work that you do every day. You really do value it. Before we move forward, I wanted to check back to see if Ms. Terzic. No? Okay. All right, so then now it's time for our Native American Heritage Month proclamation. And we are going to, as has become our recent custom, share this with among our board members once everybody has it up. We'll start with Wa and go around. I'll read it. David Douglas School District proclamation proclaiming the month-long celebration of National Native American Indian Heritage Month in November.
Whereas Native American Indians are descendants of the original indigenous inhabitants of what is now the United States, the first Americans, and
whereas the Native Americans, who were the first stewards of our environment, contribute to the unique identity of the Pacific Northwest, represented the early voices for the values that define our nation, and
whereas Native American Indians maintain vibrant cultural heritage, rich traditions, and hold a deeply rooted sense of community, and
whereas there are 65 non-Hispanic Native American Indian Alaskan Native students enrolled as students in David Douglas School District, and there are 749 students who self-identify as ethnically and or racially Native American, Native Alaskan, or Alaskan Native, as students representing 50 tribes bands from across the nation. And
whereas we cannot ignore nor erase the consequences of our country's long and unfortunate history of violence, discrimination, and deprivation of the Native Americans. but we can commit to working together for a bright future. And
Whereas the district's Native American Parent Advisory Council continues its efforts to increase Native family engagement by forming strong relationships in a culturally appropriate way and to provide feedback and guidance to district leaders on improving outcomes and providing opportunities for Native American youth in the district. And
whereas the district has an adopted equity policy that states our commitment to closing the achievement gap for Indigenous peoples and creating an educational environment where all students can benefit equally from the educational programs offered. And
whereas the district is working towards eliminating the racial predictability and disproportionality on all aspects of education and articulated action steps in the adopted district strategic plan and district equity plan. And
whereas the district proclaims every second Monday of October to be Indigenous Peoples Day as an opportunity to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of Indigenous people of this land, to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of the Indigenous peoples of our region, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples everywhere. And
now, therefore, I, Donna Barber, Chair of the David Douglas School Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim the month-long celebration of National Native American Indian Heritage in the David Douglas School District to occur in the month of November. Be it further resolved that the David Douglas School Board of Directors strongly encourages our staff and community to observe, recognize, and celebrate the culture, heritage, and contributions of Native Americans to our country, our state, our cities, and our schools. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pete O'Farrell. I am a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher at Ron Russell Middle School. I'm here to also represent the school, but also to represent our equity team. I'm co-chair of our equity team, along with Karen Rosenberg and our administrative advisor, Megan Lutu. I have the honor today to welcome two David Douglas students here, Rose and Ashani. Ashani's 7th grader in my class, and they have agreed to come here and share some of dance with some of their heritage and things that they are will for Native American History Month. To give more context and to explain what is going on, I'm going to welcome up Ashani's uncle Irvin, who's a drum carrier, and will explain the context around the dance and what the meaning of it is.
Hello. My name is Irvin Wilson. I'm Klamath, Modoc, and Paiute. So I thank you guys for inviting us and allowing us to come here and be a part of this meeting. So I'm honored to be asked to come here and represent my family in our community, my children, right, and also our ancestors. It's very important to me that my kids take pride in who they are and in their culture and values. And so I was just speaking with them just the other night about why it's important for us to dance and sing and participate in our culture. And there's been what I can share with them in a way that they would most understand it is that so many of our people have died. Millions of Indians have, died trying to protect our way of life and our beliefs and our values, our traditions. And so when my children are able to dress down and come out and dance, that's what they dance for. They dance in that to honor our ancestors, to honor our culture, our families. And so I'm very happy to be here and support my children in that way. I also want to recognize my son. he's not dressed down, but he's joining us at the drum. So he's gonna sing with us, and it's I carry the drum for our Wellbriety movement here in Portland, but also I have some amazing brothers that show up whenever they're called on to come and sing with me. We sing for events, celebrations, sometimes funeral services, but it's always very important for us to show up for each other and to sing, because you never know like who you're going to touch spiritually, you know, in our singing and drumming. And so we think of it as a way of sharing medicine with each other, and we're very blessed to be a part of it as well. So my niece, she's dressed down in a women's fancy regalia, and which represents the butterfly dance. And so when you see her dance, she's gonna it's gonna look like a butterfly dance, right? My daughter, she's wearing a ribbon skirt, and which is traditional attire for if you know you're going to a ceremony or some kind of honoring event. So she's wearing a ribbon skirt. My nephew, Kingston, he's wearing a grass dance outfit. So in our culture, that was a very traditional dance. When they would find a place to gather and get together and have a celebration, they would send the grass dancers out to the prairie, and they would dance and stomp down the grass and make it a nice and neat place to join and dance and have a celebration. So I don't know what else there is for me to share. I'm just thankful that, I have a great group of friends that show up for me, and we support each other in this community. Our culture has a lot to do with being clean and sober and sticking to our way of life, and making sure we have a strong future set aside for our children, and making good choices, throughout our lives. And so, and our culture helps us to do that. And the brothers that I sit with, they all support that, and they all walk that kind of way of life, and we support each other when we get together and drum, and it's great. It's fun, we have a good time doing it. My wife just ran out. I don't know. So if it's okay with you guys, I would ask for you guys to stand up while we drum an honor song, and then we're going to sing another song where the kids will dance. Okay? Thank you. Oh, yes. After this first song, you guys can sit down.
Thank you. And now we have a presentation for David Douglas High School.
I am stepping in for our Indigenous Student Club at David Douglas High School. One of our club leaders could not be here this evening, but we'd like to present David Douglas High School Native Voices. It's a short video recording of our Indigenous Student Club, and they wanted to share some thoughts with all of you. So if Sandy could play the video, we'd like to hear what our high school students have to say and their thoughts and feedback.
Kawai'i. My name is Lindsay Wasley. I'm Yupik. My tribe is from Alaska.
My name is Aubrey Nahara. I am Penobscot Native.
My name is Kyla Starr. I am an Indigenous woman from the tribes Warm Springs, Wasco, and Paiute.
Hi, I'm Chanel, and I'm part of the Coeur d'Alene tribe.
Hi, I'm Andrea Jaramillo, and I'm from the Chippewa Cree tribe.
Hi, I'm Kadai. I am a senior at David Douglas. I'm enrolled in the Siletz tribe.
I wish people would acknowledge that I am more than being Mexican. I wish people understand how difficult it is representing two cultures in one style.
Even though I don't have dark skin, that I'm still considered a person of color.
When we are taught in history, we should be realistic and represent other things that are not included half of the time, like the pilgrims and stuff like that.
When I'm going online, seeing the news or just anything, I don't really see people acknowledging the Native American community.
I would really like to see a lot more Native people in power, especially in the schools, as teachers or principals or just staff in general. Growing up, there wasn't much representation of that, and it's something that I really needed in my life, I feel like.
One thing I believe that should be a part of our school courses is Native American history classes, so that students out of school could be more involved with our people and our history.
I wish people wouldn't be afraid of asking others about their cultural background, about pronouns, about sexuality, or about who they are as a person.
Don't be afraid to embrace your cultural identity and learn new things.
I'm also Hispanic, and most people, they never assume that. They assume I'm either white or just Native American, and I want to feel included. I want others to feel included when we talk about cultures or races or anything that's important to us.
I would love to see, in the classrooms, that we're like taught the actual history of my people and like our culture, because I feel like when people think of Native Americans, they go straight to like the Pilgrims, and I think we need to remember that there was a time before that.
I think we shouldn't be forgotten.
I just wanted to spread awareness that we are still here. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you all for participating in that. It is extremely important to us that we continue to uplift the different heritage and cultures in our district, and it's been amazing to have our equity team and chairs be a part of this work. Each school has been assigned to a Heritage Month that they will uplift and continue to send out resources about, but also with the goal of coming here where we're bringing it full circle and embracing how different all of us are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are all enriched by the diverse community that we get to be a part of. Our lives are greatly enriched, and we are benefited immeasurably by the contributions of the Native American community and all of the different communities that make up our district. I am personally so proud to be here. So now we want to move to our data report, and Brooke O'Neill is presenting.
Okay, and once again, that is very hard to follow, such an inspiring, and moving performance, but we're going to talk about data right now. And I'm really excited to have some of our curriculum and instruction team members join me tonight in presenting. I am so honored to work with these people who are passionate about serving our students and our teachers, and they do incredible work for our district. And so thank you all for being here tonight. So Sandy, if you could pull up our report. There we go, right there. We're going to start off just with some introductions so that you know who's who, and then we'll explain how this is going to work. So they're going to introduce themselves in the order that we're going to present. So next slide, please, Sandy.
Good evening. I'm Elise Hall, Assistant Director of Title Programs.
Cameron Cross, Reading Intervention Coach.
I'm Francesca Altman, Language Arts Specialist.
And I'm Rochelle Zimmerman, Mathematics Specialist for the district.
So some of the work and the data that we're going to present tonight, you have seen prior. Derek had presented some of this to you in the data report. So what we're going to do tonight, though, is we're going to spend our time talking about these assessments, a little bit about what is the purpose of the assessment, how often do we give it, and then what do we do with that information. And then we're going to share some high-level data with you so that you could see overall how we're performing by grade level, but then broken down by student groups, so you can see that. And then you also in your board packet got an additional packet so you could see the school level, so you can see how each of our individual schools is performing. So with that, we're going to talk about the data, but more importantly, we want to share with you at the systems level some of the work that is happening to address the data. I think it's very fair to say none of us are happy with the data as is. This is beginning of the year data that we're sharing with you. We're excited to come back in January or February and share growth that we're going to see. We're very confident in that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elise.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So while we are showing you data from our elementary reading assessment and our 1st through 8th grade math assessment, as well as our 6th through 8th grade reading assessment, they are all considered screening assessments. And so we wanted to start today with what is a screener assessment? What is the components of a screening assessment? And that is that all of these assessments and the data you're going to see, the assessments are easy to administer and they're brief. We give these assessments 3 times a year, the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. The assessments are all standardized and sensitive to growth over time, and they are reliable and valid indicators of academic risk. what we call a first alert. It's like taking the temperature or your oil, checking your oil, and it just gives us an idea of a risk level. We cannot use these as a diagnostic. We don't know exactly from these screening assessments why a student is scoring at the level they are scoring. And we would need to dive a little bit deeper in additional data to learn that. We do not use this data for grading purposes or report cards, and we cannot customize it for our local level. Again, it is a standardized assessment. So we're going to share some data with you, and then the steps that we are taking based on this data.
All right, I've got notes because I tend to wander. So, the first screen we're going to talk about is DIBELS, and DIBELS stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. It's used to measure a student's ability to hear the sounds in words, recognize and name letters, decode words, and comprehend what they read. 3 times a year, our K through 5 students take the assessment. It is individually administered, which means that a teacher or instructional assistant, an IA, meets with each individual student to conduct the assessment. The student will either read from a piece of paper or a computer screen, or they'll listen to what the teacher or IA is saying to complete a task. Students will complete several tasks, each one taking anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. Our first DIBELS assessment window was completed September 29th of this year. And after the DIBELS testing is completed, the results are used to help determine a student's likelihood of succeeding at grade level work, helps us track the proficiency throughout the school year, and it helps us in planning a foundational reading skill focus for each student. And what we're trying to answer are these questions. Are they on track? Do they have difficulties? And how do we help? Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we finished our first round of DIBELS assessments at the end of September. And we refer to this test window as beginning of year, sometimes BOY, sometimes benchmark 1. So you'll see these different acronyms throughout reports. You'll see on the screen, or this one is actually in your packet too, 100% diverging bar chart, and it's titled DDSD Elementary Beginning of Year DIBELS Composite Status Levels by Grade. So let's go. I'm going to go over the basics. I understand you have seen charts like this before. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and I'll just spend some time on this first one, so you'll see more of these, and once we do this first one, then we can just smoothly go through the rest of them here. So first of all, this chart represents all the elementary school students K through 5 that took the DIBELS assessment. So this is our entire district. Second, the chart represents student data from the beginning of the year assessment that we just completed at the end of September. And next, I want to briefly explain what composite means. Students take several assessments within the DIBELS framework, and what happens is how they do in each assessment builds up to a composite score. All right, and from the score, their effort is categorized as one of 4 composite status levels, and that's what we're looking at up here, and it's based on how they do. And they're considered either well below, below, at, or above benchmark, with benchmark being a goal score set for each grade level at that time of year. So as the year goes on, that benchmark changes. As we look at the data up here too, or in your packet, you'll see there's a line that runs down the middle to help us see the distribution of students that were either well below or below, that's our red and our orange, or at or above, which is our light and dark green. And then finally, within each color, we see a percentage. This is the percentage of students at that grade level that fell into one of the 4 composite status levels. So for example, on the screen there at the very top, that's our 5th grade students. We see that 33% were well below, 33% below, 7% at, and 27% above grade level. Once again, this is for the September assessment, the BOY. And then without even, the nice thing about these kind of charts, we can look at the shape, the color, and just looking up there without seeing numbers, we can see that our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade students had the highest percentage of students fall within the at or above benchmark. 2nd and 4th were both at 44%, and 3rd grade was at 43%. Next slide, please. Next chart, same data, except these are student groups. And whereas we sorted the previous chart by grade level, you can see up in the blue there is subtitle, we took each student group and collapsed it into one. So it's, when we look at district elementary at the very top, that's all kinder through 5th. And next one down is ELL, that's all ELL kinder through 5th. And in the parentheses by the side, that's number of students across the district that took the assessment. And then once again, you can follow the colors going across with well below, below, at, or above. And if we're looking at the very top for the whole district elementary, you can follow that line down and see how the different student groups did compared to the whole district as a whole. So we're at 37% at or above at the district for elementary. And then, as I mentioned, you can look at either side of that line and find your data stories.
Can I ask a quick question? On
Sure.
the last slide, you had kinder being primarily below benchmark. Does that mean that the students who have been in school for like 3 months,
this is the starting point, yeah,
aren't reaching the benchmark for like where they should be as far as mathematics go?
Well, this is reading right here for Dibbles.
Oh, this is reading.
Yeah, this is reading. We will go over. We do have math data to go over too.
But just so it's September, so the students have been in school for just like 3 months.
Yeah, well, September they're for less than a month. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
aren't reaching a benchmark that they should be reaching after 3 weeks in school.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. You're welcome. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Francesca.
Okay, so looking at that data, obviously we have some concerns. We have some work to do, and so I'm really excited to be able to share with you kind of what we're doing to change this data. And the exciting part for me is that the last time that I was here presenting for you was when we were wrapping up our adoption process for our new curriculum. And that has been, our goal is to give all of our students access to high quality grade level instruction. And so that is truly what we believe will change these numbers in a positive direction. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about what we are doing. So as you know, we adopted our HMH curriculum for grades K through 5, and we are in year 1 of implementation of that. So some of the things that we're doing to ensure high quality implementation are providing ongoing professional learning for all of our teachers. We have a cycle of roughly about every 6 weeks of grade level specific professional learning focused on specific aspects of implementation. So things like assessment and small group instruction and things like that. In addition, we also are providing weekly teacher tips that are very specific, actionable items for our teachers to be able to implement that day in their classroom. So how can they take that curriculum that our adoption team decided was the best fit for our district and really make it come to life for our students and have positive impact for all of our kids? We also are engaging in some really specific coaching work with our student achievement specialists or our in-building instructional coaches to really equip them to provide that support for our teachers as they implement. And that includes working directly with our publisher to provide some direct coaching for them in being able to support that implementation and what that needs to look like. And then actually just today we got to spend the entire day with our elementary principals and assistant principals and Kyra Donovan of the, I'm gonna mix this up, the International Center for Leadership and Education, and she has just been a gift to our district as she's worked with our principals and really worked on what it means to be an instructional leader and what it means to support implementation and to ensure that all of our kids are getting high expectations and that they're getting access to that core instruction. So those of you who are in this room that were there today, I think all of us would say it was incredibly impactful for our principals. They're excited to continue that work. And we also know that our kids need more than just that core instruction. We talked last year during the adoption that we were not going to find a curriculum that checked all of the boxes. That just simply, it doesn't exist, or else we would all have that curriculum already. But that we knew that we were adopting what was best for our kids based on the information that we had. But in order to take that a step further and to really address the data that Cameron shared with us, we've also adopted ECRI, which stands for Enhanced Core Reading Instruction. And what ECRI is it's something that really takes this core curriculum we've adopted, and as is in the acronym, it enhances it. So it really takes specifically the foundational skills portion of our instruction for our kindergarten through second graders and it kind of just makes it more robust. It's extremely explicit, routines-based, systematic instruction. It's research-based to have an extremely high success rate with schools that have very similar demographics to ours, and it's specifically aligned to our HMH curriculum. So it's not a separate add-on, it's a really seamless swap out with what is already in there. And in order to help this implementation be really strong, we're doing in-building coaching. So this week, our elementary school started having full-day coaching sessions with ECRI coaches who are coming in, working with our kinder, first and second grade teachers to really be in the building with them, showing them what it looks like, modeling lessons, giving feedback, and supporting that work. And that was the first of multiple sessions that they'll have of that this year. In addition to that and ongoing professional learning that's been offered, we've also been able to take many of our teachers and principals to East Gresham Elementary, which is a school that does have similar demographics to our district and has been extremely successful with ECRI implementation. They've shown numbers similar to, I think, 90% of kinders passing benchmark assessments through their use of ECRI. So we've been able to take our teachers and our principals there to really see what it looks like in action, to be able to ask questions of their principal and their teachers who are implementing. And the feedback we've gotten from our teachers who have been able to do that is just wonderful. So we're very excited to continue that implementation as we move forward. And I will go ahead and pass it back to Cameron.
All right. I'm going to scoot a little closer here. All right, so me again. Next up, the screen we're going to talk about is reading inventory. Also known as the RI, so we're going to stick in the reading realm. RI helps us measure a student's ability to comprehend what they've read as well as their vocabulary. 3 times a year, our 6th through 8th graders, they take it the RI. It's a whole group administered test, which is on the computer. And this means a class might go to a computer lab, to the library, stay in their room, and take the assessment at the same time. On the computer screen, the student will see a passage on the left and a sentence on the right with a missing word, a blank. Below the sentence are 4 words that could complete the sentence. The students are asked to select the word that best completes the sentence based on the passage they read. This multiple choice test is an adaptive test, which means that the difficulty of the question depends on whether the student answered correctly or incorrectly on the previous question. It's not timed. The software, after roughly 20 to 30 questions, will stop the assessment when it has enough data to produce a Lexile score based on the student performance. With the data from the RI helps to determine student reading levels and to inform instructional decisions. We use it to measure and monitor students' growth towards reading proficiency throughout the school year, and it's also one of several data points that's considered when making intervention decisions. Once again, are they on track? Do they have difficulties? How do we help? What we're trying to utilize or do with these assessments. Next slide, please. And so here we are again. We just finished our first round of the reading inventory assessments on October 5th. For the RI, we refer to this as the fall test window. This 100% diverging bar chart, DDSD middle school fall reading inventory performance level by grade. This is the data from that fall test window. As mentioned, at the end of an RI, students are given a Lexile score, and like DIBELS, a score falls into 1 of 4 levels. For the RI, they're called performance levels, and students are considered below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced based on their Lexile score and grade in school. The chart up here represents all of our middle school students, grades 6th through 8th. And as we compare the grade levels, once again, we go down. If you take your vision and look at the line that goes down the middle, you're able to see who falls on the, well, not who, but the percentages that fall on the below basic and basic side and the proficient and advanced side. And by looking at this data, we see that the 8th graders, 40% of them tested at proficient or advanced on the fall RI, followed closely by 7th grade at 39%. And then once again, we've taken the data, put it into our student groups. We've collapsed it. So like the very top there, district middle school, 1,832 students took the RI, 6th through 8th. And overall, 37% of them scored at proficient or advanced. And you can make your way down to the different student groups, see how many students tested within the 6th through 8th grade, and how they performed as far as performance levels go. And this was on the fall RI, and we ended that assessment the first week of October. Okay.
Okay, so similar to our elementary, we also, as you know, this was a K-12 adoption, so we have a new curriculum at middle school as well, and that's the McGraw-Hill Study Sync curriculum. So again, that goal of grade level access for all of our students is part of this implementation, or is really the focus of this implementation. So similar to elementary, our middle school teachers are getting this ongoing professional learning series, and we're really trying to be responsive to our teacher and student needs in the content of those sessions that we're doing roughly, again, about every 6 weeks. Again, focused on really specific aspects of implementation. And I was actually really excited this last one that we did was able to be very responsive. So we have a great influx of newcomer students, newcomer English speakers, and we're hearing the need and hearing there is a great need for support. You know, we want to give this access to all students. So how do we do that? And so we were able to have our October session focus specifically on the embedded supports that exist within the curriculum to support not only our emerging multilingual students, but also any students who need extra support to access that core instruction. And our adoption team, one of the things that really stood out about this curriculum to them was that there are a lot of really great embedded supports within the curriculum that are designed to support our students. And so we are able to provide extra professional learning on those built-in supports and really focus our attention there. Another thing that's going to be coming up this year is our novel selection process. So part of our adoption was to adopt 2 novels at each grade level in middle school. And we tried to do this in spring, and really that conversation, it kind of fell to our teachers weren't feeling ready to make that decision. They didn't love the options they had, and they didn't love them because they didn't feel that they represented our students. And so that was actually a great reason not to adopt at that point. So I'm very glad we didn't rush to that decision. But that means we're doing it really intentionally this year. And so doing a lot of front-loaded work to research the authors that are available, the years of publication, independent reports that exist on some of the novels they're choosing between. So really doing some intentional work around that to increase representation for our students, which we know increases access as well. And then we're also actively working on creating some walkthrough tools and some supports for our middle school principals as instructional leaders as well, to support them as they're supporting their teachers in implementation. So that's really our next phase, is how do we get to know this curriculum deeply so that we can help our principals get to know it deeply so that they can support their teachers in that implementation as well. Again, with the intent of raising those scores that Cameron shared with you a moment ago. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Rochelle to shift us over to math. Oh, sorry, to Cameron, but yes, to math.
There we go. All right, me again. All right, so our final screener is the math inventory. It's also known as the MI. The MI helps us measure early numeracy recognition for first grade students and fact fluency, operations, and algebraic thinking for our students, grades 2 through 8. 3 times a year, our elementary and middle school students take the MI. Like the RI, it is whole group administered on the computer. Students will see a math problem on the screen and have to select the correct answer from one of 4 choices. And like the RI, this multiple choice test is an adaptive test. At the end of the assessment, a student is given a quantile score based on how they did. And the data from the MI helps to determine student readiness for math instruction. It also measures progress on math growth towards proficiency. And the MI is also used as one of the data points to help inform math supports. So once again, these assessments help us answer the questions: are they on track? Do they have difficulties? How do we help? Next slide, please. So there's 2 data visualizations up here. They're both the math inventory. The one on the left is for elementary. That's district-wide, grades 1st through 5th. We do not administer it to kindergarten. And the one on the right is for middle school, 6th through 8th. So once again, we're looking at below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. and we go to the line in the middle, and we can look at either side that we want, and we can see that 5th grade in the elementary has the highest percentage of students at proficient and at advanced, and over on the other side, 7th grade has the most proficient, the highest percentage students at proficient and advanced. Next slide, please. And then here we are with our student groups. Left side, elementary, each student group has been collapsed. All 1st through 5th are represented in each of those. And on the right side are middle schools, 6th through 8th. You can look at the top for the district elementary and the district middle school and compare our student groups as you travel down the line. Okay.
Save the best for last. Thank you for taking our comments tonight. I have a couple speaking points. I'm new to the position. I'm excited to be here. We got a lot of work ahead of us, as we can see. And even though the MI starts at 1st grade, I think that kindergarten is really where our learning starts. So I want to speak to a little bit of K-8 at this point. So one thing that I want to just point us back to is that we have evidence-based strategies, instructional strategies that our teachers have had training on in the past and had supports on in the past. But the reality is, since coming back from COVID and our pandemic-style CDL learning, it's been tough, and not just in mathematics, but definitely we're seeing it there. So within CDL, holding rich mathematical discussions, which we know leads to greater gains, especially when we have student groups that are composed of all different levels of learning and understanding. That rich collaboration and tasks where students can build on each other's ideas is really how we start seeing students finding themselves in the math. They find themselves engaged in the tasks, and thus they start making gains on their understanding. Coming back out of CDL, we have in the classroom, which is where I've most recently been, it took a lot longer to get students willing and flexible and feeling safe and comfortable enough to have those conversations, because going into the pandemic, we are all aware of the norms around math understanding. Probably many of us in this group would say, ooh, math, not me. And our students come to our classrooms with that same perspective. And so having to really create environments that encourage braveness, right? Like the courage to make mistakes and be okay with making mistakes. So we're constantly working towards that. One of the programs that the district purchased would be Dreambox. Dreambox came out of a need that we saw last year with unfinished learning. And Dreambox is an evidence research-based program that helps to supplement core curriculum to support students and educators, I'd say, with giving students the individualized learning that they need. It can adapt in either direction, both upwards for those students that are ready to extend upon prior learning, and also it can help support students who might have some foundational gaps that a 3rd grade teacher might find really hard to support because those gaps might be quite lower, that maybe is a little further out of the teacher's norm of scaffolding. Furthermore, going forward, you'll be seeing me a lot more with curriculum adoption. I'll be here again in the springtime to present to you what our wonderful committee of 27 elementary and 25 secondary teachers elect. We are working on a K-12 adoption. However, we believe right now the goings are probably going to be a K-5 curriculum and then a 6-12 curriculum. That's likely where we're headed, although we could be the same publisher all the way across, yet to decide. Currently, they are fast at work trying to decode and go through the publisher reports that ODE had put out from the state adopted or approved list, and we will have a vote in for our top 4 this coming Wednesday. So we're narrowing down choices, and they've already been asking some wonderful questions. Furthermore, we can't address those concerns in all the red and the orange if we don't talk to our students. We have to be talking to them, hearing what it is they need, what are they experiencing. And so that was one of our big priorities this school year. Let's talk to our students. Let's have them communicate with us. What are they noticing and what do they see? And what are their needs? So I'm excited to show you. It's a gigantic packet. I don't expect you to read it all tonight, but you have a 3-day weekend, so maybe. There are some wonderful points. I do want to give you a couple of pages that I would recommend. Page 2 and page 3, those are convenient. Very first, kind of give us some celebrations, some areas that our students are saying, yeah, teachers, educators, thank you. These are going well. And then some considerations. What are some areas that maybe we have some misunderstandings on, or some learnings that us as educators need to build upon? Furthermore, I believe it's page 14. Maybe someone could check that for me. I apologize, I didn't write that down. But we start comparing teacher responses to student responses. And this was a really interesting piece of our survey that I'm excited for you to look at a little more in depth, because this will be some of our conversations that we take not just to our adoption committee, but to our teachers in mass. You think that students need this, however, they're saying they need that. Interesting. So we have some growth to do, and I'm excited to hold some of those conversations across grade bands K to 12. And as you all are aware, it's just a matter of planning the time and making sure that we're intentional about not bombarding our educators with one more thing, and instead supporting them in a way that feels just in time, as they say. So thank you for your time tonight. We are happy to host questions.
Yeah, and I want to thank this team, and I want to thank our MESD. Wow, we could not pull this data together without partnering with the ESD, because we gave them our data and they created this amazing report that's really helping to guide our adoption process. And as you see, at the systems level, at the district level, we support our schools and we try to create the conditions to impact change. The real work, the real implementation happens in the buildings. And I do want to shout out to one of our principals that's sitting in the audience after a very long day of professional learning today, Susan Olds at West Palhurst. Thank you for being here. Because they are all our principals, our teachers, our students are really doing hard work to change those numbers that you see. So as Rochelle said, we are open for questions if anybody has any.
I have one. We had the other slides on math inventory and math composite. Can you explain what's in the math inventory and what's in the math composite?
I think the math inventory scores are different than the composite scores. We saw some composite scores earlier. Sandy, would you mind actually going back to where it might say like Dibble's composite? Keep going. Oh, yours has a different in your packet?
Well, no, mine's the slides that were school-based, like Cherry Park. It was all breaking down, so I was trying to figure out what was the difference. It was another slide deck.
Sure.
That was sent to us.
Yeah, and we did not publish that piece that we gave you because it could, like we talked about before, some of the student groups are so small that it could have identifiable information. So I don't know if they have that. You have that packet in front of you?
What you have in the packet that was sent to you was one is the Dibbles composite, which is reading or literacy skills, and the other was the math inventory. And what it did is it took the overall district for each of those and then compared to the school. So you should have the same data visual for the district wide at the top of each school report, and then below that will be the actual school data visualization so you can compare the two.
I'm trying to determine what do you mean by the inventory versus the composite? That's what I'm trying to figure out when I'm reading this data.
Yep. So the composite, when you're reading that, you're looking at Dibbles, early literacy.
Yeah.
So that's separate from our math inventory and reading inventory. So Dibbles is through our Acadience Learning Online, which Dibbles lives in for us. And then we have, through HMH, we have our reading inventory and math inventory. And so if you're looking at elementary school like Cherry Park, you're going to have data on Dibbles, and you're going to have data on math inventory. But you're not going to have reading inventory at the grade school level because we only do that at middle school.
So the Dibbles is the composite, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so Dibbles has a composite score and it has a composite status level, where the math inventory has the performance levels and so does the reading inventory,
Yeah, so the Dibbles composite is a series of mini assessments that lead to this composite, but when you get to the reading inventory or math inventory, it's one test that's adaptive, whereas the other is a series of mini tests.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question because
Sure.
I'm working with 5th grade math students that don't know their multiplication tables.
Okay.
And so the teacher's having me test them on multiplication. I did a few kids testing.
Okay.
And is that an extra thing the teachers are doing?
If they're asking you to assess a student on multiplication facts,
Yeah.
that does sound like it would be something that the teacher is using as their own internal classroom formative, or even potentially like a unit assessment that they maybe are getting their students ready for. The math inventory is all computer based. It would be at a sit down kind of once and done style kind of testing. So it sounds like what you're working on with that teacher or that student group
It's just an extra
would just
little
be
thing so she knows
yeah, so
what
maybe
they
like
need
a
to work
standard
on.
that she's working on with her 5th grade students, trying to
Yeah.
ensure that the students are showing mastery or proficiency towards multiplication. And that would be outside of the math inventory test. Now, it would likely come up. So in winter, when the students take the MI again, that student might not have been able to show any multiplication facts on math inventory, but by the time they get to the winter assessment window, they hopefully have made gains by all the wonderful work that they're doing in class.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and these can definitely, what we're sharing with you, our screening data cannot be the only assessments that are happening. We want our teachers to be using formative assessments in addition to all of these, so we know what's happening in between as we get to these different benchmarks in the year.
I have a question. So when you showed the early fall, which we said was like just a few weeks into school, is that typical or better or worse than in previous years?
Very good question. So compared to last fall, and then once again, we're coming out of two different falls. One was coming out of CDL, the other one after a normal year. And really, as far as like math inventory, we had a couple of grades that were a little less, 1st and 3rd, but then we have 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 8th that the percentage of proficient advanced was a few percentage points higher, and then 4th and 6th were the same as last year. So on the math side, pretty similar. And then as far as dibbles go, 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th had some considerable percentage changes in going up towards at and above. We did see bigger drops at kinder and 3rd grade in the dibbles scoring for at and above. And then the reading inventory, we were a little lower, especially in the 8th grade. And we did see also a higher percentage than we typically see of students taking less time on the reading inventory. There's a recommended time of 15 minutes to complete it to give a more accurate snapshot of the student's abilities. And if they go too fast, then that's either they're schluffing it or it's an indicator that they don't have the skills. But we had more students fall under that 15 minutes as we went back and looked at the data. So as we go into the fall, and so I'm talking about middle school here, reading inventory. So as we go into the winter, assessment, we're prepping some information and videos for the teachers that we would utilize with our intervention teachers to remind the teachers how important it is for the students to take their time, and to then also let the students know, one, it's important to take your time, and two, with the reading inventory, we talked about how it's adaptive and it gets harder as they get questions correct. And what happens is, I learned several years back interviewing students, what happens is you'll see a student start, there's a few sentences, maybe 3 or 4 on a passage, they get it correct, passage gets a little bigger, get it correct, passage gets a little bigger, and then pretty soon they're like, this is a big passage, and they just don't even answer the question. And I would ask students, do you know what that means when the passage what you're reading is getting longer? And they had no idea. And so once I informed them that it means you're getting it right, you're doing great. So you just need to a little persistence. If you need to take a little break and, regroup and push on through. So when we did that, the number of students in the interventions that were taking less than 15 minutes, that percentage went way down below, 9%. And so when the students know and also the teachers know, then students tend to be a little more focused on it. So that was a long answer to a short question, but when it comes to the RI, we see this dip with the middle school, and then I look at the data and I see how long it took them to take that reading inventory, just one of the other data points we look at to make sure that we've implemented with integrity. That is one of our focus as we go into winter, is to educate the teachers and the students about what this reading inventory is all about and why we want them to do their best on it.
And so if we're looking at proficiency at that grade level, that early in the year, it would seem like it should be mostly in the red or the orange because they just started that grade.
Yeah, and because we're coming out of summer, right? We're coming
Right.
out of summer, and you'll see in the reading literacy, there's more green. I mean, we're practicing reading and talking literacy skills, listening
But
all
what I mean
summer.
is that if a child is just starting 5th grade, it would not be expected for them to be proficient already
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
5th grade
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
because that's why they're in 5th grade.
Exactly.
To learn.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to make sure.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
I will say with that, though, it is a moving benchmark. So it's a beginning of the year benchmark, and that number does grow throughout the year. So it doesn't mean they've reached, on Dibbles specifically, not reading inventory, but on Dibbles, it doesn't mean that they've reached end of year proficiency for 5th grade. In your example, it means they're where they should be for the beginning of 5th grade.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question about the language adoption rollout, because I can't imagine that every single classroom teacher has completely shifted everything they're doing to this new language adoption. I want to know, are you tracking that? How many folks are really adhering to these new learnings, and who is not? And is there a way to sort of look at classroom by classroom? I'm realistic. It's hard to do that. And we're trying to make system-wide change, so.
Yes, we are trying to make system-wide change. So with HMH and with StudySync, there are login data that we can access from the platform. So we do have some usage data, and we just looked at data. HMH prepared some data reports for us recently that showed us the amount of usage, the amount of logins that we have, and based on their analysis and what they see for districts our size, it looked like we had pretty good usage happening. We also are working with our instructional coaches and our principals on supporting the implementation in the buildings. So knowing what is occurring, how it is going, what are the needs is occurring through that conversation that we're having and that feedback from our principals and from our instructional coaches.
I understand you might not have these now, but it would be really great to know what pretty good means. Thanks.
And that was, Stephanie, some of the work we did today with our elementary principals. How do we keep the thing, right? Because you're right. This is implementation. It's one thing to adopt a curriculum and go through all the work to adopt the high quality materials. It's a whole nother thing to implement it deeply in order to start seeing change. So that's the work we did with our elementary principals today, and it was amazing just to have time for them to get into their data with the module assessments that they're looking at, and because there's a whole other set of assessments within HMH, and look at, are we giving the assessment? What are our kids doing? Do we have evidence? How are we keeping evidence on the table? And that evidence that we keep on the table shows us if we're using the curriculum. We also have pacing guides for the teachers so that we should know where teachers are within implementation of the curriculum. And again, it varies and ebbs and flows a little bit based on classroom situations, but that will be continual work that we will need to do. So I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah. What's been the response to the ongoing professional training? Have you been getting a lot of buy-in from our teaching staff? Have you been getting pushback? What's it been looking like?
So I know that we've had a series of professional learning opportunities for our teachers. Starting on August 31st, we had a rollout for HMH and ECRI for our K-2 teachers. We followed that up with on a Wednesday virtual session about writing instruction on October 5th. And then October 6th was a professional learning day for our elementary. And we had a half-day live grade level specific session for small group instruction for our teachers, as well as a virtual session for ECRI for focused at the K first and second grade levels. And then just Wednesday of this week, so yesterday, we had assessment focus that was grade level specific, and that was another virtual session on a Wednesday morning. We collect feedback following each of these sessions from our teachers and ask about how, if the information was clear and helpful to them, if we've met the learning targets, and what their needs are for additional support, as well as what they are going to try in the classroom. Yesterday's data showed about 80% of the teachers that responded felt like they were able to use the data reports. They understood the reports that were available to them, and were able to use those reports to inform their instructions. So I think that it is a little awkward to have someone from outside our systems providing professional learning virtually in a Zoom setting with a whole grade level across the district. But I do think that we are getting some valuable information. We are looking at reviewing that process and maybe having our SASA step in and lean in a little bit more to provide more engaging and robust and connected professional learning for our teachers in the buildings.
The best professional learning, that was the ECRI. I have to really give a shout out to Elise and Francesca for teachers to be able to have their own personalized coach in their own building, personalized by grade level. They get to spend about an hour and a half per grade level with a coach, and then they go into their classrooms and they model a lesson with their own students. And I think you just see all these light bulbs go off. It's a very, very powerful professional learning model versus the Zoom. We're trying to with the Zoom. And also the learning is immense. It's immense, the amount of material in HMH and the things to learn. So how do you pace that without overwhelming teachers? So it's a lot to learn.
That was a follow-up question I had, as when are the teachers doing this? I mean, teacher work days, is it late start Wednesdays? Like, when are they finding the time in their schedule to take part in a lot of these?
Yeah, so a big part of it is those late arrival Wednesdays. So it's a rotation schedule this year where roughly every 6 weeks there's a content focused professional learning morning, so about a 1 hour session. And for our elementary schools, those are devoted, those every 6 weeks are devoted solely to language arts professional learning tied to our implementation. And then for the secondary level, they're focused on that teacher's content area. So for our English and language arts instructors, they're getting that time. And then as Elise mentioned, when we have professional learning days, we're often able to utilize at least a portion of those for the learning as well. And then the ECRI coaching that Brooke spoke to, those are really happening in the school day. So with like roving substitutes and things like that for our teachers to be able to stay in the building and doing that learning on site, which is great. I think some of the most valuable learning. And then again, some happening electronically. We mentioned the teacher tips earlier. Those really actionable, bite-sized professional learning opportunities for them weekly. And I would say that's one of the areas where we're getting some really strong feedback from teachers is how can we take one component, really make it palatable and actionable for our teachers. Yeah.
Thank you. How long do we have to roll this? I mean, how many years is this curriculum going to be our curriculum before we, look at something new?
So roughly every 7-year cycle. And from what we're learning, I think our team has done a lot of professional learning around what implementation looks like. I remember Elise saying last year, just wait, adoption's step one, but this is the first step of a triathlon, and she's absolutely right. But I think that, really what we're seeing is it takes a few years before you really start to see that deep implementation take place. And I think when you were asking about the effectiveness of the professional learning, I think one of the things we've wrestled with a lot is we know what some really engaging professional learning can look like, but in year one, you've also got so much technical training that has to happen, right? How do you navigate the curriculum? How do you administer an assessment? How do you find what you're looking for in all these boxes of great materials, right? And so I think, that's tough year one, because those aren't always the most engaging professional learning. They need to happen. We have to learn. And also for us to be able to provide really great internal professional learning, we have to learn as well, right? So we're in this learning phase of navigation as well. And so my hope is that it continues to grow and develop and become more robust, and we can focus more on instructional practices and how do we take this and really bring it to life in the classroom once our teachers can navigate and find what they're looking for and acclimate to those materials. So we're definitely looking at least a good couple of years before we feel like we can say, we're in deep implementation, I would think. Yeah.
If I could add on to that, just because math adoption is going to come right behind that. I want to just say thank you to Francesca and Elise and Brooke, because I think that we're already set out to be a pretty awesome team, and I think it's only through collaboration that we're going to be able to support our teachers in a way that feels like, oh gosh, I'm not getting another training. So many strategies you can use in a classroom that are 100% pivotal to, okay, I can use this strategy when I'm teaching mathematics, and I can use that same strategy when I'm using or teaching, science or this language arts lesson. And so some of the structures and routines that I think are going to really maximize learning are transferable from content to content to content. So yeah, it's a big lift, and it'll be a big lift next year too, but I think that the partnership that we're creating is going to, I really hope that it'll look like, oh yeah, we learned about this last time. This is how it also can look or feel or structure within mathematics. And so it's not like I'm learning everything brand new. I'm just building upon it and adding one more use for this thing that I've already learned how to start with. That's my dream.
Yeah, and then our next steps, we have our year of initial implementation with the curriculum, and then in the summer, calling teachers who have been very successful with implementing the curriculum, and then we map it out. We can't do a curriculum map until we have a year of implementation, because we don't know what we don't know. So now we have a year under our belt. We can bring teacher leaders together, and we can start identifying what are the priority lessons, that we're all going to teach. What is the vocabulary we're all going to teach? So we just tighten that a little bit more, give a little bit more guidance. So that work's going to happen early summer this year.
Great. Thank you. And I would guess that there's some way, in light of that, there's all this learning taking place, but we're also looking at student performance, some way to distinguish if there are students struggling, how much of that is attributable to the students' needs or to the instructor's implementation. Like, I don't know what that would be, but I'm just wondering, because we could say, oh, well, the kids are, even in the language that was presented, of everything seemed to be weighted towards the children's ability to learn, understand, and to progress. But as we look at it and we evaluate it, I'm assuming that some of it has to be with the instructor's ability to engage and to teach. And somewhere in all of this, there's some way of distinguishing what the performance, what is attributable to what. Is there? I guess.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to get better at, is definitely measuring our implementation, and what does that look like, and so I know we're looking at developing walkthrough tools so that we can go through and, when principals are doing walkthroughs, or Ken or any of us, that what would we see in every classroom? What would full implementation look like? If we were to walk in a classroom and we were seeing the curriculum fully be used, what would we see happening? But yeah, also there's a paradigm shift. It used to be like, I taught it, they didn't get it, we're going to move on. That paradigm has shifted and we're still working on it. I taught it, we have evidence that, learning hasn't yet happened. We didn't teach it.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yes, so we need to go back and rethink what we're doing. That's where all of those other formative assessments come in between, because now I need to go back and either reteach, do small groups. It's really, this is the science and the art of teaching that becomes really complex. But yes, that is the paradigm that we work under. We teach it, there isn't evidence of student learning, we keep evidence on the table, and if there isn't that evidence, we didn't teach it.
That's great. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. It was great. And for this full packet of information.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask one quick question. It's just a small one. In terms of RTI and interventions, I remember we've had conversations before where we didn't have a real consistent curriculums that were being used school to school, and I'm curious if ECRI has lent itself to, is it better in that way, and has there been uptake for kids that are in higher levels of support for, and maybe that are on IEPs too, like if there's that continuity and whether or not it's transferring well into classroom lessons. Does that make sense? My question.
We are using ECRI at our kindergarten level and trying it out this year as a tier 2 pre-teaching support for our students. So seeing what that looks like and if that functions well as an intervention for our students. We also have our instructional assistants and our learning specialists as well have been included in some of the ECRI training. Definitely our learning specialists, and during the coaching times, some of our IAs, instructional assistants, have been engaged in the ECRI coaching so that they can provide small group ECRI routines and ECRI materials to either pre-teach or provide additional supports in a specific skill that a student is not proficient in yet. We are just getting better at ECRI and evaluating the progress through our progress monitoring as well as through our RTI meetings. So our 100% meetings in winter after our mid-year benchmark screening and our 20% meetings, those meetings we will have a chance to get feedback from our teachers about what's working in the classroom, and I think that's where we're going to hear how ECRI is going, what the benefits and the growth that we're seeing for our students, and what next steps we need to take to support our teachers in that implementation. I'm sorry, is that, Heather, did that answer?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. Are IAs at every school being trained? Or when you said some IAs, is that consistent across the schools? I'm more thinking like we're asking about like how do we, track impact and success of, and so I'm just thinking more about that. Like, what's the consistency look like? Is there consistency? If not, is there a way to think about that, like the differences between schools and how that might track to impact?
For kindergarten, not all of the schools are implementing ECRI as an intervention just yet. I think there were some schools that felt like their systems were strong and they didn't want to start out with something new. But other schools are trying ECRI, and this is a great way for us to pilot and see the impact and the change over time. So I can say that in January, after our winter screening, our title teachers come together to prepare for our 20% meeting, our intervention meeting that we have based on all of the data we've collected at the mid-year screening, and we'll be able to discuss what they're seeing with their progress monitoring data and the impact, and share out if what's working about ECRI and if we want to increase that implementation at that time. And then we will also have the supports in place, because we'll have the ECRI coaches coming back second and a third time this year, as well as we're looking at additional training potentially on February 17th, which is another professional development day for elementary.
And I should say, too, in addition to all this work happening in core, what we call core, Tier 1 instruction, part of our racial equity plan calls for an intervention audit. So that is work on our radar, too, to make sure that we're auditing and looking at everything happening across all of our schools, and almost adding to our adoption cycle. If one year we adopt core, then we do an audit, and then we shore up some of our intervention programs, and we do an audit. So this year our goal is to put together the system in order to construct that audit, with hopes of making sure we get start implementing that next year.
And I'll just add as well, in the special education, we're partnering around this intervention audit so that we have consistency across the systems as we really invest in the tools and supports in those tier 2.5 to 3 range, where we're really focusing on those lagging skills because of students' disabilities.
And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much, and brag up before the board to talk about, I don't know that you recognize it. I get the opportunity to see snapshots in other districts. This doesn't just happen. This team, their professionalism, their dedication, their fingerprints are everywhere. The stamina it takes. We have some administrators up here. We also have TOSA sitting there, and that position of TOSA is an interesting position to be in, and I just want to recognize and thank you for the work you're doing. We can feel it. You're right. It's long game. It doesn't happen overnight, but I know your passion, and I could feel it in this presentation. I'm guessing our board can. So just thank you. Stick with it. Let us know where you need help, because you're making a difference and ultimately impacting kids' lives, right? So thank you so much.
I also want to introduce Jeff real quick. He's on our team as well. He's science and health, but he was here supporting Sanger Farms. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is is an action item for our consent agenda. Is there anything that's listed as part of the consent agenda that anybody wants to pull out before we vote? If not, I will say that you have heard or read the items of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move approval of consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Stevens and seconded by Board Member Christopher. Are you prepared to vote? Yes? Okay, any questions? Oh, you're saying hi. I thought you were saying you had a question. Okay. All right. Then, Walwyn.
Aye.
Rita Christopher.
Aye.
Aaron Barrow.
Aye.
Gabriela Saldana Lopez.
Aye.
Barbara, aye. Stephanie, thinking of Heather Franklin.
Aye.
Stephanie Stevens.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. It is so ordered. Moving on to now you'll see on our agenda it says our annual staffing report. However, of course, Candy Wallace is not here because she is sick. So if it is okay with everyone, we are going to postpone that report to next month and move that onto December's agenda. All right, and that will move us to our annual enrollment report. which we are also doing the same thing, or are you going to take that one? Okay.
Same thing. Both of those, Candy would really like to be involved, so the discretion of the board, if it's okay, I could definitely walk through it, but it actually provides a little opportunity as well, because I know you have the reports. If there's any questions from now until then, this week, tomorrow, next week, whatever it may be, we can be answering questions, delivering information, but at the December board meeting, we will go through those in a full report and communicate out both of those reports, if that's okay.
And the one pager with, it's all up online now. I always
The enrollment?
Enrollment. I always pull it down for the foundation. So
I look to Sandy because she's the one that posts that. We're good. Yeah, they're up. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So we will come back to those next month. Now we are at our OSBA elections. This is also an action item where we need to vote on the positions that are on the ballot for OSBA. And we are just looking at, number one, OSBA Board of Directors, position 17. There is only one person, Katrina Dowdy. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And when there's only one person, do we still have to vote?
Yeah, I think she's a wonderful representative and has been highly supportive of this district and of education in general. And I'm really excited that she is standing for this position. So I'd like to move approval of our board putting our vote, because we only get one, toward Katrina Dowdy.
Do I second?
Okay. It has been moved by Stevens, second by Nguyen, to approve position 17, Katrina Dowdy, for the OSBA board. We still have to do.
We
still have to do the vote. So, Wildwood.
Aye.
Christopher?
Aye.
Barrow?
Aye.
Lopez?
Aye.
Barber? Aye. Franklin?
Aye.
And Stephen?
Aye.
Yes. Great. So it has been approved. The second thing we have to vote on for OSBA is the resolution that adopts the proposed legislative priorities and principles. So again, do we have a motion to adopt the principles for OSBA?
I was happy to read the emphasis on equity, and I enthusiastically move approval of this resolution.
Awesome.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Stevens and seconded by Saldana Lopez. And then if there are no questions, we have our vote. Why don't we start on this side?
Stevens votes aye.
Stevens votes aye.
Franklin, aye.
Aye. Barber, aye.
Saldana Lopez, aye.
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 And Nguyen.
Aye.
And it is so moved. Thank you very much for OSBA. Okay, so now we are at reflections on our public comment, and just want to open it up for any thoughts on the things that we heard this evening. And it was, as a reminder, from the parent who was talking about the Girl Scouts and the use of the building for that. Any?
I have questions and comments. Having been a Boy Scout leader, den leader before, and used the buildings, in the past, there was never a charge for as long as it was students that it was focused on. Now I know we had a new person handling some of these things, so is it the same situation that EPAT ran into?
I think so. I think we just have a miscommunication, and so unfortunately I did get an email Tuesday, but we've been a little occupied with something else since Tuesday. So I haven't gotten to dig into what exactly transpired yet.
Yeah, it might be a little more training for the person who's receiving, they get instructions and you have a schedule and stuff. But I remember quite a few boards ago, we wanted to encourage community uses if it was our community and try to minimize any charges as long as they were doing it within the custodian hours. Any time outside that, there's always extra cost, but it might be good to reach out to her to let her know it was more of a new person trained and was trying to do her job, but didn't understand the full policies maybe.
Yeah, so Pat and I connected. I mean, I just saw the email today. I know it sounds like Pat had one, maybe not, maybe didn't see it till today either. Either way, we'll be following up with this family and communicating. And we do have fee structures in place. We have practice in place. We do go through a process when they apply, and there's a workflow. There are connections and allowances for our families and students. But sometimes that slips, and it slipped here, and obviously we'll be following up. I will say this, though, just to make sure, it is hard because there's got to be some sort of balance of, and I hear what you're saying, that's typically what we try to do, Frida, is our students in our community, but once you start making allowances, if you don't have something concrete, then anyone can say, well, I want to use the building, and I want to use the building, and I want to use the building. There are some standards that we have to have in place and use. And I know you all know that, and I think one of the standards, if they're our family, our community, that works. But we've had neighboring districts that have got caught by that, to be quite honest, where we're saying yes to this group of students or this troop or whatever it is, and someone else came in that maybe is something that we're questioning, or is that something that should be in a school? And the answer is, well, you're saying yes to them. You have to say yes to them. So there is some of that delicate navigation that we do as well in this process. But in this case, it was just, unfortunately, it was an oversight, and we didn't get in front of it until literally, I saw an email today. I think there was an email to the entire board. I believe the testimony, that's yeah.
So then, for clarity, there is somewhere a policy on the use of the building by David Douglas students or parent groups, and then what the criteria is, so that it does not become just subjective to, well, I like this person and they get it for free and somebody else gets. Somewhere there is those criteria.
Well, there's policy. The policy doesn't go through that criteria, though. The policy is more about facility use. So that's the board policy. And I haven't looked at it in a while, so I'd have to look at it when we get home. But the practice and procedures is step 1, fill out this form. Step 2, it goes to. Step 3, it goes. So there are those steps kind of outlined as it plays out. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are more the practice and procedure. The policy doesn't get into that much detail.
Okay.
And just so you know, when the new year starts, whoever's using it and say they want to continue doing like the Girl Scout trip, they have to fill out the form in July 1st going for the new fiscal year. So it's not just continuous. Right. It's just for the fiscal year or for the one event.
Yeah.
But this is more than one troop. No, because she was Gilbert Park. The email we got is a different school. Is Earl Boyles, and it's multiple multiple Girl Scout troops at different buildings, and they're getting different bills too. This one said 4,000, I think, but the one in I don't know if it's Lincoln Park or Earl Boyles, but theirs was like 7. But yeah, and these are continuous. These are people that have used the spaces before.
Heather, I remember reading that, and the email was regarding a classroom use, and she talked about using a cafeteria, which are different types of facilities, which may be why they got different kind of pricing.
So like gym, cafeteria, classroom, they all have different pricing for facility use. And so that's why I was like, when I heard that, I was like, that's why the bill was.
Would you mind sending those, like just the price? I just want to look at it. I don't want to get in at your business. That's administration, not board. I'm just curious, like what it looks like right now, and if there does need to be some policy guidance at some point. But I'm just curious, just because last time we heard about Cairo, the African group, and I'm curious. So that'd be great. I'd just like to see it.
Yeah, and I have two comments or questions, I guess, depending, going off of what Stephanie said. I just feel like I'm getting more comments lately in the board around facility use, and it's like, who do you identify? I know with David Douglas, we have tons of partnerships, right? So how does that identified in terms of usage and obviously time frame and all that stuff too? And secondly, I know that Sun Community Schools is a huge partner. So what types of partnerships fall under Sun School in terms of, like I'm thinking of Girl Scouts could be a partnership with Sun Community Schools, and how do we strengthen that partnership through, at least when I was a Sun School coordinator, like my role was that I facilitated all the partnerships within that school. So I imagine, let's say if I was at that school and I was a Sun coordinator, I would actually develop some partnership with Girl Scouts to strengthen my Sun School program. But that was just an idea that I have, because that's through facility use, but also they would have to register, the students would have to register through Sun School to be able to participate in Girl Scouts. So I don't know, like there's just a lot of ideas to move around that, but like with the partnerships, like that's the confusing part, right? Like who's a partner, who gets the facility use, like who gets charged what, and that was just my thoughts as we're getting more comments from the community about how folks in the community can partner with David Douglas, and what is that?
Yeah, and that's exactly where it gets messy. It's right, if we do have a fee structure and application process, when are we implementing it or when are we not implementing it? And that, to be quite honest, that's very, very messy, right? You don't want to be subjective in it, you want to be objective in it. But what is a partner? What is not a partner? What is a group? What is not a group? Is a birthday party? And again, I don't. But I'll just throw it out there. If someone says I want to throw a birthday party in the gym, and I go to the school, is that yes, we do it, and there's no fees? Is it? So there are those pieces that navigating it can get messy.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that if I heard you correctly, you said it's a board policy, and then there's the district practice in the implementation. Is that what you said? Right? So can we look at the board policy that is in place, and then, because that would be where if we feel like we need to.
I'd like to look at that, Donna, and I also want us to consider not just financial considerations in this, because I feel like if our job is educating kids, we may be missing opportunities for partnership that actually get to some of the numbers we want to affect today, like homework clubs, which I heard is done at Cairo, and other things where people get extra tutoring. I just think it may need a look. It's been a while. Like if I said, how many partners in education does David Douglas have? I'm sure there are many. Should there be a formalized partnership process? Are there benefits of that? How does somebody, become one? What does it mean? What are the obligations on both sides? A birthday party and space rental is a completely different issue to me than partnership.
Yeah. And if there are things that, as we look at that policy, that we need to consider that we might not know, then it would be good to, that should inform our policy, then that would be really helpful. And like the things like Frida mentioned, if it is, of course, if it's after hours and that incurs additional cost, then that would affect what the policy is, versus during hours when it's not going to cost us any extra, then, how we handle that would be different. So I think that that's something that we should take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. We can bring the to be quite honest, it'd be very helpful, because it's been navigating this, we felt it. So one, the policy, but two is the procedures and practice. And I know I respect, thank you, Stephanie, for saying, the management side, but to be quite honest, as a district, the policy around fees and how it's used, you have that authority as well, right? To kind of guide the district and share that, no, we don't want the fees over this, or we don't want fees at all, or this is when we should do fees, whatever it may be. So the bottom line is absolutely, I think it's welcomed, and we can walk through it together. That's good.
Yeah, I would like to see that too, and really be intentional with equity. I think that a lot of our facilities use, like if we're not if we're not really prioritizing the equity lens, we're missing kind of a whole picture too. Like I think about the swimming pool, and when the fees increased on the swim team, the first thing that happened was the in-district enrollment reduced and the out-of-district enrollment increased, right? So we all of a sudden had a swim team that was much more made up of kids from outside of David Douglas. And so, what does that look like? Well, it means that the scholarships gets dropped immediately. So that means that the kids with highest needs are not able to be on scholarship on the swim team. And I know we heard about that with the water polo too, and the kind of ripple effects of excluding people from spaces has all kinds of impact, scholastically, safety-wise, and I mean, I think that we can look to best practice models too in other districts and other states where schools are really community hubs, and like, what does that look like? You know, to have spaces that look different and are, you know, dreaming bigger.
Yes.
You know, I'd like to think that way.
Okay.
And I just have something that's not related to the facilities use. So I don't know if it would be okay to kind of change.
But connected to the one
public
comment? Yes.
Well, kind of. It has to do with
Well,
just
then,
like Native
sure.
Heritage. Yeah, Native Heritage Month this month, and I just wanted to call attention to the fact that right now the Supreme Court is going over a really important case that would put up for them to decide on the Indian Child Welfare Act, and so I just wanted to call that for people to pay attention and to really advocate and support Indigenous sovereignty, because that is definitely what's at question and what's at stake. So just because I don't want to just do an acknowledgement, I want us to really get deep in it and really like pay attention to things and advocate whatever we can do. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Okay. Board liaison and committee reports. And I apologize that I did not reach out and just ask ahead of time, but does anyone have anything?
Well, most of our efforts were on bond.
That's what I figured.
And I know
Understandable.
Ken and I went to a lot of meetings to push the bond. But I also am back, as I mentioned before, back in Lincoln Park with the kids. And it's so rewarding. I know most people, I couldn't do it for 20 years when I worked. So, and, but you really get an eye-opener on what the teachers are dealing with and behavior and whatnot. And the loss of learning some of them had, especially if it was, I've seen it in math because third grade's critical and they were online in third grade. You know, so you're seeing more of that. And so it's kind of interesting to see where the issues are and stuff. I know I make a special effort to try to assess the kids, and because I know when you work with them a one-on-one, sometimes you can pinpoint where their problems are or who's sloughing off and really knows a lot more than he lets the teacher knows he knows. I've got a couple of those. So, you know, try to find those things. But it's really interesting getting back in the classroom after 2 years. So, and thoroughly enjoying it most of the time.
Given that last account, 60% of our voters approved the bond, and having knocked on hundreds, I know some people thousands of doors, and talking to parents and being at back to school nights, I think there's energy in this district to get back in the buildings. I do believe that. And I wish sometimes, because I'm talking about the bond, that I could have had a little thing about, have you thought about volunteering? Have you thought about just being a caring adult in the building? Have you thought about being in our middle school hallways, you know, making sure these kids are feeling safe and welcomed? I think there's energy out there, and I think there's a lot of support that can be leveraged. So if there's anything we can think of to help promote that, I'm all in. So, yeah.
I have to say, Stephanie, because I did Gilbert Heights for years, and when I go to log in, even at the beginning of the year, there was a long list of volunteers. Well, at first there's only 2. I think we're up to 10 now at Lincoln that volunteer on a more regular basis. But the principals did say it's kind of slow going, getting those the parents back involved. And yeah, or grandparents, yes. In fact, I encourage anyone I know who smart reading is really looking for volunteers. So if you know a retired person, all the schools are looking for smart readers, and that's a fairly easy thing to do because all you do is read to the kids. So it's not as intimidating as like me working on multiplication and division with kids. So if you know any neighbors or stuff and they're finally wanting to get out of their house, it would be a thing to do.
Speaking of parental engagement, I got inadvertently recruited to teach basketball, even though I only played 1 year of junior high basketball. I know that's what they always say, you're tall, you should play. But there's a wonderful grant that is offering all of our students an opportunity to play sports for free, but there's nobody signed up to be a coach. So like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, Ventura Park and Floyd had enough kids sign up for 2 whole teams, but no coaches. So I'm just putting a shout out, if you know anybody, especially retirees, that might be willing to step into the court and coach. We really need coaches right now. We've got an opportunity for all our kids to play for free, but we need volunteers to help out on the ground. You know, I'm a little nervous, but
is that district-wide for them to play free?
Yes, it's part of the Student Investment Act.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Our community sports program. It's community rec, community sports.
I think it's just like everything. Like every school could use coaching
everywhere.
volunteers.
Yeah. It's all of our schools. There's openings everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Donna, are you volunteering to coach basketball?
Oh, hey, there you go.
Hey,
knows more than me.
Donna, yeah. I assisted coach 1 year of soccer, and I knew nothing about soccer.
My daughter just finished up the community volleyball that was over here in the high school, and Dora was one of the teens helping. They were so great. But yeah, it was like, but they did have plenty of coaches for that one. My son was an assistant coach for the community volleyball program. So it's been really fun. But yeah, the community basketball is 3rd through 8th grade, I think. So there's like a bunch of different opportunities and kind of different levels.
And who do people talk to if they're interested in coaching?
Solid question.
So at each school, you could connect with the principal and they could guide you. But ultimately, we do have an athletic director for our community sports program that we added to the budget. And Stacy Heath, some of you might recognize that name. She's the athletic director for that program, has a district email, district director office is right over there, and has been spearheading the program and trying to continue to grow it and recruit. And that's why I know there's actually coaching openings, because she sends email out district-wide, hey, we need this, we need that. So yeah, but Stacy Heath is technically the
Are you putting it out through Parent Square to all the parents? Because that might it might trigger someone who, oh yeah, I'd like to do that just for their own exercise.
Yeah. So we have parents here that get the Parent Square. I think it goes out, but I'm not sure if you've seen it. I'm seeing one nod over here. So
they don't recruit unless you're signing up your kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more of the recruit if you're signing up, but I could talk to Stacy about, we could recruit district-wide. Is there people interested, and why and how?
Well, I'm just thinking there might be high school parents who might want to do it, but their kids aren't in that program anymore.
Mm-hmm. My husband loves basketball, and my kids do not. So I could see him like, what? Like, oh, maybe I could borrow someone else's kids. And
Stephanie, my son loves it, and his daughter doesn't play either.
Okay. Any other? Wow.
Well, one of my report was the presentation today, so the November 18th event. So I did forward an email, and then they passed out flyers. So I do plan on attending, so I'm putting that on my calendar. So hopefully more folks can join too. I think it's a great experience to really see a partnership right in our school district. So we don't have very many things in David Douglas School District in terms of partnerships like that. So I think Zanger Farms is a really good one for us to really build a relationship with. And then the second report I just received an email, catching up on emails since we've been so busy with the bond. I think Stephanie received this. It's with participatory, I can never say this word, participatory budgeting. So they have an event this Sunday, November 13th. I can forward the email, but they're looking for a David Douglas High School youth to join in that event. So he's just asking if there's any suggestions on which teachers they should reach out to, and if they're just looking for a contact to get some more representation from David Douglas High School for this event this Sunday. So I can forward more information, but they do provide good food, I guess. I heard that's a big thing for young people that entices them, but I think they just want more input. I think this is an important way to engage East Portland youth, and I think historically we've been left out of these conversations, so I think this is a great opportunity. I think that's been a challenge in general. They're just figuring out, like, who do we contact? How do we get more young people involved in these things, especially from David Douglas, so they want to make sure there's representation. So I can forward that, but I don't know who's the best contact for this in this school district.
What's the particular focus area of it?
So this is a big, I know this because there were a couple of, a senator and a couple of representatives that actually put $500,000 from the COVID ARPA dollars to the district or to the area for youth to decide what to spend it on.
Okay.
So it's an opportunity for young people to get to spend $500,000. And you see how excited they are when they get to, support a cause they believe in, or the Scots Angels. I just think it's a really great opportunity to say, here's, if you have public dollars, right, here are the parameters, how would you budget it? It's a great opportunity for them to learn. So that's what it is.
Is Sunday the last opportunity?
No.
Okay.
There's not? Okay. It's on the social for David Douglas.
Is that
Dan,
something
wherever you are.
like we did with the bond, that could be shared with the student council or shared in advisories so that goes out to all of our students?
Yeah, so it did. Heather, I don't know if she minds me sharing, she kind of brought it to our attention, did a virtual introduction, and then we connected with Greg Carradine, who ultimately connected with Kelsey Stiff. We did also wrap in Dan McHugh, and we did post it on our social media, so it's on our Facebook, and then it was presented to leadership classes, I believe, and then also part of the bulletin, I believe. I don't have all of that, but yeah, so there has been some initial kind of invite, representation, hope, connection, started by Heather's kind of invite. But while back to your conversation, anytime any of that comes through, an opportunity for our kids, you can send directly to me, you can send directly to Dan, however we can help bridge. Greg Carradine also, anything that's going to be about kids, he's going to love that email. So, but don't ever hesitate, and we can help try to build a bridge and build that connection. But in this case, that's what we did. We had an introduction, we connected, and then we started reaching out to our students.
They probably haven't found a youth from David Douglas yet, so I think this email came through just a few days ago. So Jim Lab is the contact.
Yeah,
and so I think they just want to make sure that there's a representation from David Douglas. But I can forward it to you, Donna, so you get the information again. But
that's Jim's the individual, so I think it's really been this week since so it doesn't surprise me we don't have anyone yet, and I hope we will get someone, but yeah.
Thank you. So then we are moving to our financial and investment report. Is that hat?
So it's going to be brief. And you're
joy.
going to notice a theme. So as you read, the general fund is, the projected ending balance is ticking up a little bit, which is pretty normal. We're seeing some of those vacancies fill in. But again, the ones that are still outstanding, I'm starting to take off those months that I had projected that we would have them filled. But if you notice in general fund and transportation fund, there's a theme about no chassis available for the buses, which is a bummer. That's the nicest thing I can say. We will probably have to get in.
It's supply chain.
It is supply chain. And you'll notice that in nutrition services, there's supply chain issues also, just with different products. And so they're having some pretty significant issues with produce right now. It seems like any type of lettuce, spinach, and it's anything from weather issues, production issues, bug issues. So it's just like, really? We were having a lot of problems with getting just flour. That seems to have alleviated for the moment, but oddly enough, it was like, I think I might have mentioned last month, we could get pancakes, but we couldn't get the waffles. Seems like it's the same, but don't know why that is. So we're having some fun times with supply chain. We did get some additional stimulus funds, and there are some strings attached to what we can pay for with that. And so we've been focusing on dairy items. So that's a little bit why you're seeing the dollar figure tick up a little bit. And what is interesting is, like, in the produce, you can have radishes and celery. So I'm sure the kids are real excited about that. That would be me, no. So switching to the investment report, you'll see there's $42 million in cash as of September 30th. And you'll also notice down at the bottom, the LGIP interest rate has continued to increase quarter over quarter from 1.15% to 1.9%. But year over year, you'll see that it went from 0.55% to 1.9%. So we are getting a little more return. Still very small, but it is creeping up. So, any questions?
Thank you. And finally, last but not least.
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule here, so this is good. Although I have a brief superintendent's report tonight, so it's not that I will go really fast and try to rush through it like I have when it's real late, but obviously I don't want to keep you all too late. But the very first thing is I just wanted to follow up on one thing, and actually Donna brought this to my attention, and it's a follow-up to last month, and it's been mentioned a few times here with Cairo presenting, and I don't have an update. So the reality is we left last month with the idea that we're going to look at the possibility of an MOU. Could they be successful in our middle schools, partnerships? We had a conversation following the board meeting. We have those next steps in place. We just haven't got to them yet. So that update is, I just wanted to make sure everyone here, or actually Donna reminded me to update everyone, and Kelly and I actually have been in contact. That's going through Kelly and I Day to kind of take those next steps and continue that relationship and talk about, is there a fit? So that's one, the update. The second thing is a little more, bless you, wanted to update. I've been updating the board along the way, but I just want an opportunity to update the community, and specifically to add a little bit of authority around it. So reading today, maybe yesterday, the CDC has come out with a warning that the country is experiencing a surge of 2 seasonal illnesses. One's influenza, the other one respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, we've heard of it. So the reality is they're talking about it's hitting earlier and it's much more intense. The state of Oregon's talking about they haven't seen a big bubble, to be quite honest right now. They haven't seen that. They're tracking it as well. But the reason I'm bringing this to the board's attention tonight and following up on some of my emails is we are feeling illness in buildings. We're having some very significant impacts. I shared with you, we had a building this week that had over 105 students out and over 14 staff members out. So that was an elementary school too. So that's a big piece, and that's not just one building. There's a number of buildings. The reason I'm bringing it up is, one, our staff is just doing an amazing job, including many you saw here, our district staff, just filling in, covering, just piecing it together as much as we can. But I also want to be realistic with the board and make sure that they understand and our community understands that if we ever get to a point that we can't safely run school, we could close down school for a day or two. We do not take that decision lightly. This week we were probably borderline, to be quite honest, at the school I mentioned. We knew it was a short week. We just kind of got through it. Thursday there's no elementary school. Friday, hopefully we have a buffer here. But I just wanted, again, the board to know I will keep you updated. If you ever get questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But it is real right now. And maybe we're in a bubble. Maybe it's real. We're going through it next 2 weeks and it'll be done. I don't know. Obviously, we have a couple members tonight not here because they have it, or some of my team, some of our staff that are not feeling well have it. I don't know what they have, but it's those that have had it. I can tell them. Maybe you have family members, others. They're not feeling well. They're just not feeling well. It's not just a cold. So anyway, just wanted to update the board with that. And the last thing I wanted to update, and everyone has talked about this a little bit, kind of But I think it's time for us to think about a pause. We've got a lot of work in front of us, but a little bit of a celebration and a recognition. And today at 4:45 was the last count. And in that count, we know that we had 11,646 yes votes, 7,755 no votes. That's a total of 19,400. I'm rounding votes altogether, and it's already been shared. We're above 60% approval rate right now on this bond. We know it's not over until every vote is counted and certified, but the Oregonian, Oregon Live has called this. So we are in a position now where we're going to say, you know what, we believe we're trending in the right way. And I want to thank our entire community. There's a camera up there. So many people were involved in this process, and just thank all of them, thank our voters, and also recognize that we have 39% that didn't vote for it. And that's an opportunity for us to learn and continue to build those bridges and invite people into our buildings and schools and get those even a higher percentage next time. So a thank you to our families, our community, our students, everyone engaged to this, and just believing in us, trusting the community and the investment in schools. And then lastly, just as importantly, thanking this team, this board team, how you came together, each and every one of you, to just be part of the process and believe and carry a huge time commitment, and it was noticed. Right, I had the opportunity to be in a different bond in this district, and it wasn't every board member. It wasn't a team effort. It was maybe one, maybe two, and so that team effort here, I think, made a difference. And I think it's just huge. So thank you for your professionalism, your belief in the district, and ultimately, now there's a lot of work to come. Right, a lot more to come, and we're excited about that.
Can we have the bond committee? Are we continuing to meet, or is it suspended just for a little bit?
We will probably meet as far as we know. We have one meeting on the schedule next Thursday with Jeremy, just kind of the wrap up, and Jeremy's Jeremy Wright consultant that we work with. So there's something there. And then what we'll be transitioning to is more of the bond oversight committee. So we'll be talking about that's some of our work to come, but we do have a meeting next Thursday. And in that meeting, we'll talk about, okay, what's the next month look like, the next 2 months look like, how often we need to meet, what's the executive leadership team, what's the bond oversight committee team, how are we going to frame that, and then how do we develop a schedule. That's what's going through our head. I also want to share that communication's already gone out. There's a letter from me thanking our community. There's also a communication that Dan drafted that's a little more general. That's going to be more of a social media type post. Both of those we push send during this meeting. They're going out and starting to get out and about. And then we also are planning, next steps, right? So we'll have communications within a week that talk about next steps, what's coming, what you will see, what's our process, what's the bond oversight committee, how are we going to be moving forward with that. So step 1, step 2, step 3, we'll continue that communication process. So did that answer your question, Frida? Is that?
Yeah, since this is my last year on the board, I am going to be your first volunteer for the bond oversight committee starting on July 1st. I figured since I worked to pass
You're not really leaving. You're not really leaving.
Yeah.
Well, I just am really interested in those things getting done.
I like it. Write it down, Andy. We got a volunteer for a basketball coach, 6th grade. Is that what you said? No. Thank you, Frida.
All right, so if there is nothing else, thank you all very much for your time tonight and for what you do every day for our kids. Meeting adjourned.
You guys, I'm going to say one more thing. We're off the record now, which is, I could have said it in, but it just kind of went in. And I know every single one of you stepped up and did so much, but I also want to just recognize Stephanie. She did, from what I saw behind the scenes, I know she's too humble to take it, but just her